Girl walks into a store and sees a pair of shoes on sale. And anybody who knows any member of the female gender could testify just how much females love shoes, especially when they're on sale. So this girl here sees the shoes for $200. Only problem is that the sale price is not included. It just says 25% off. That's all it says. And the girl doesn't want to bother calling the clerk because the clerk will likely just tell her to figure it out on her own. Because that's what clerks do. They're just busy. So now the girl has to resort to her math skills. And she remembers back to Mr. Melham's class where he said the first step is to ask yourself this question. What is 25% of $200? That's step one. You have to ask yourself this question, and you have to understand the word of always means multiply when it's between two numbers. So what do we do now? We take 25%, we convert it to a decimal because it's unusable unless it's a decimal or a fraction. I'll show you the fraction in a bit. We're going to multiply it by $200. I have my calculator here, but I'm not going to do it because I can do this in my head. I know it's $50. You can try to punch it in if you don't know how to do that in your head. Now that we know, look, we figured out 25% of $200. So now, look what it says. 25% off. I can scratch 25% and I can turn it into $50 because that's what we just did. That's 25% of $200. We can take that $200. Now we can take off that price. There. Off means subtract. Subtract, you're going to get $150. And you're done. That's the answer of the question. Of course, you're going to be paying tax. We'll do that later on in the lesson. Now, I said you could do this question by converting the percentage into a fraction. And I'm going to show you that right now. 25% as a fraction is what? It's 25 out of 100. Right. Reduced down becomes 1 out of 4. And you can always go back to my fraction lessons if you forget how to do this. Now I'm going to take 1/4 because that's 25%. I'm going to multiply it by 200 and look at that. 200 has a denominator. We multiply fractions by top over top, bottom over bottom. We get 200 over 4. Hey, what's 200 divided by 4? Split 200 into 4 groups. Get 50 in each group. Right. So 1/4 is going to be $50. Take it off, we go back to this step, and you get the same answer. We're going to be doing a few questions. I believe we have 7 more to go, and we're going to go through them fairly briskly. We have, what is 25% of $200? And this question here, I mean, this isn't the question. The question is right here. 25% markup. The opposite of a sale is a markup. And stores do it all the time. They just don't advertise markups because nobody will come. The markup means we have to add that price to the total, and the shoe price originally is still $200. 25% markup, you ask yourself the same question. Hey, what's 25% of $200? Just so we can mark it up. And you're going to go back, you're going to go 0.25 multiplied by 200, and you're going to get 50 again. The only difference with that $50, here's $200, is you're going to add it to the 200. That's what markup means. We're going to increase the price by $50 or by 25%. And we get $250 as our final price. We have a movie theater. We've got 90 seats in the old theater, and we've got a new theater being built, and it has 110 seats. And we want to know, what is the percentage increase? Remember the last question with the markup? Well, this is a markup type question, because we've marked up the seats from 90 to 110. We've increased the amount. Okay, fair enough. How much did we increase the amount? Here we increased it by $50, right? And 50 out of 200, if we go back to this, 50 out of 200 is what? It's 25%. Punch it in your calculator, you get decimal 25, and that's 25%. So the markup is 25%. Now we go to the movie theater question. How much is the markup? From 90 to 110, look, 110 minus 90, I mean, a lot of you can do this in your head, is 20 seats. They've increased the theater size by 20 seats. So we've got a markup of 20 seats. And that's going to be out of what? Well, look at the last question. It was out of 200 because you always got to compare to something, right? To the total. The total price was 200 here. What's the total number of seats here? Is it 90 or is it 110? Right, you always go to the 90. The 90 has to be, because you have to compare it to the original. So that's the increase. We increase it compared to what? Compared to the original. So that has to be the denominator. So 20 out of 90, what does that make? That's going to make, I mean, you could do that. If you remember back to grade 7, we learned some strategies to figure this without a calculator, but you're going to get decimal 222 repeating. Hey, how do you turn that to a percent? You times by 100. You go times 100, which means you move the decimal twice, and you're going to get 22%. Decimal's going to go right, let's darken it. Decimal's going to go right there, bounce twice. 22.2 is just going to be 22 rounded. 22% increase. Increase. Up means increase. Okay, we've got a boy at 10 years old. We've got the same boy at 15. Doesn't seem like he likes to change his outfit too much. So we have to figure something out about this boy who doesn't like to change his clothes in 5 years. By what percentage did his height increase? By what percentage? So we need to find a percentage. We need a top number and a bottom number. We got to divide them times by 100. But what are those numbers going to be? Well, look, by what percentage did his height increase? How much did it increase from here to there? It increased by 42 centimeters, right? Increased by 42 centimeters. You can subtract these if you're not sure how I got that. Subtract these two and you're going to get 42. So it went up by 42 in 5 years. That's pretty good. He reached his growth spurt. He's not going to grow too much after this. But what's the denominator going to be? It has to be the total height. That's how you get percentages. Think to your exams. What's the bottom number in your exam mark represent? The total number of questions. Okay, well, here we have to represent the total number of height. But which one do we use? The original one that he started out at, which is 120. Divide those two together. You're going to get 42 divided by 120. It's about a third. It's going to be close to 30%. We've got 35, decimal 35. 0.35. But that's not a percentage. That's a decimal. We have to convert it to a percent by bumping the decimal 2 times. We got 35%. 35% increase. Same boy. I think I use him another two times after this question. If Jacob's height increased by 30%. Okay, so his height increased by 30%. What is his new height? Increase means we have to add. It's a markup. Think back to the shoe question. We marked it up. We're going to mark up his height now. So we need to figure out what 30% is. Remember, that's the first question you're going to ask yourself. What is 30% of this? Well, 30% of that's going to be decimal 30 multiplied by 120. If that was the pair of shoes, that could be like $120. We want to mark it up by 30%. We need to find out 30% of that price. But here we're dealing with height. So we're going to take decimal 30 multiplied by 120. We're going to multiply those together. And some of you don't need a calculator for this. This is not something you really need to use a calculator for if you've practiced enough. And you're going to get, what's that? 360. Okay, we've obviously done some of that. Doesn't make any sense. I must have forgotten a decimal. We're going to go decimal 30 multiplied by 120, and we're going to get 36. That's reasonable. We're going to get 36 centimeters. That's the final answer, right? No. You know why? Because that's the percent. Look, it increased by 30%, which means I can cross out 30% and write increased by 36 centimeter. They're equivalent. So it increased by 36 means I have to do what? Right. I have to add 36 centimeters to that, and that will make 156 centimeters. That's 120 plus 36 makes 156 centimeters. Same kid again. When Jacob was 10 years old, he was 20% shorter. Okay, well, he was shorter, which means he was less than 140. He was less than that. We have to subtract a number. But he was 20% shorter. 20% of what? 20% of this. Okay, no problem. I'm sure now a lot of you are thinking, okay, I can do this. We're just going to find 20% of that. So we're going to go decimal 20 multiplied by 140 and punch that in your calculator. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say it is 28 centimeters. Okay, we could check it if you're not convinced. Decimal 20 multiplied by 140, and it makes 28 centimeters. Ha, I told you. So 28 centimeters, he was 28. Now I can cross that out and say he was 28 centimeters shorter. Now it's an easy question. I just subtract 28 centimeters. And if you do that, you're going to get 140 subtract by 28. I will show all the steps. I've been lazy at showing all the steps, but I can show you because you will get marked for the steps on your exams. We're going to be getting 112 centimeters right there. This one's going to challenge some of you. It's not a difficult question, but it does break the pattern we've been using. When Jacob was 10 years old, right here, he was 75% of his height at 15 years of age. How tall was he at 10 years old? Think about this. If you want to try it, pause the video and see if you could do it. I'm going to go ahead and do this right away. I'm going to underline this. He was 75% of his height. What's his height at 15? It's 140. So really, this says 75% of 140. What does of mean when it's between two numbers? Right, multiply. So we have 75% multiplied by 140. Notice how it didn't write the 140 for you. That's where you need to use your smarts and some logic mixed in there as well, because you need to figure out his height is 140. You put it down here and you notice, oh, look, I just need to multiply these. I've got decimal 75 multiplied by 140. What's that? Oh, that looks kind of weird. Multiplied by 140. What's that going to be? Let's find out. 0.75 multiplied by 140. 105 is my answer. So this equals to 105. Now, some of you are thinking, okay, I'm just going to subtract 140. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go 140, subtract by 105, because look, he was obviously shorter, so we must subtract, right? Wrong. You know why it's wrong? Because it doesn't indicate anyway here that we need to subtract. Look at the last question. Here it said shorter. Okay, so we had to subtract. Here it said his height increased. Okay, so we need to add. That's fair enough. Here it says increase. Okay, so we had to add. Well, it was already done for us in this part. We had to find something else. But you see the key words is what I'm trying to get at here. There is no such thing in this question here. Where does it say his height increased or decreased? Yeah, we know it was less before, but look what it says. His height was 75% of 140. So if you can figure out 75% of 140, you know what he was. We don't need this. He was 105. We've got two more questions. Oh, actually, it might be the last. No, we got two more. What is the final cost of these shoes? Now, look, it'd be so nice if you could just walk into a store and just pay whatever the price tag said. Unfortunately, reality doesn't dictate that because the government wants a share of whatever you buy. So we need to add some tax. And in Canada, we have to pay a GST, goods and service tax. It's 5% of whatever you buy. And in every province except for Alberta, there's a PST, which is the provincial sales tax. So there's two taxes in most parts of Canada, except Alberta. We got the oil here. So let's do this separately. GST and PST. So we need to charge GST onto this price. So we're going to get 5% GST. What's the question you're going to ask yourself? What's 5%? Right, what's 5% of 200? And you're going to get, what's 5% as a decimal? Decimal 0.5. Don't get confused there. Multiply that by 200. Let's do that. 0.05 times 200. And we get $10. That's $10. That's GST. PST is going to be decimal what? 8% is going to be 0.8 multiplied by $200. And if we do that, we're going to get, let's do 0.08 multiplied by 200. Yes, $16. I mean, no, $16. That's just adding more price to your shoe. So your shoe will be, well, your shoes, hopefully you're not buying one shoe for 200, but well, a lot of shoes are going for that price. Shoes are expensive. $200 plus $10 GST plus another $16 PST, and you get a total of, I'm running out of space here, I'm going to change my colors. You get a net total of $226. That's what you pay. And the last question states that we've got a salesman. He's selling used Ferraris, still in good condition, 92,000. It's not bad for this model. How much money will the salesman earn off the sale of his car, of this car, if he receives 8.2% commission, which means that whatever he sells, he's going to get 8.2% of it. Of it. 8.2% of it. You see what I'm getting at? 8.2% of $92,000 is what we need to find out. Great. Turn that into a decimal. Hey, Mr. Melham, it's already a decimal. Look, the decimal's right there. Well, you know what? All these other questions had decimals. Like 5% had a decimal. It's right here. That doesn't mean that we just leave it like that. 8.2% is still a percentage. We need to move that decimal back twice by dividing by 100. 8.2% becomes 0.082, right? Bang, bang, there, times $92,000. And that's going to be a pretty good paycheck. 0.82, I'm going to punch it in, times 92,000 equals, that is great, $7,544. That's his take-home salary for one day.